I'll do is just talk you through our case study, which, as Emma rightly said, was around adaptation or resilience. And just to kind of go back and give you the context as to why we've been working on resilience, where perhaps it's further down the line for many local authorities, or it's not deemed a priority. Back in 2018, we had a commission of inquiry, the Hampshire 2050 Commission of Inquiry, which looked at the drivers for change in Hampshire over the next 30 years. And climate change was found, not surprising, I'm sure, to anyone on this call, to be the biggest driver of change in Hampshire to 2050. This was great in terms of amplifying the climate change agenda locally. And in fact, it led to the creation of the team, which I now sit in. Realize I didn't introduce myself properly. I'm the delivery manager in the climate change team at Hampshire. But also what it did was it, as well as saying that everything we do as a local authority and everything that we do in Hampshire impacts climate change, everything we do in Hampshire is also impacted by climate change. And I think understanding both sides of that coin really meant that we had to include adaptation in our future thinking. So when we declared our climate emergency in 2019, we established two targets. One was to be carbon neutral by 2050. And I know not the most ambitious target out there, but that's what it is. But the second target was unique at the time, and as far as I'm aware, still unique, to have a target for resilience. And this target was specifically for Hampshire as an area, not just the council, to be resilient to a 2 degrees rise in global temperatures. So what that means in Hampshire, and this is true for most of the UK, is hotter, drier summers. As we've seen last year, we all felt it, and warmer, wetter winters. And I think just knowing those two basic facts really is enough to guide our thinking. And what we've then tried to do is incorporate that knowledge into some form of thinking that affects everything that we do. And so what we've done at the local authority level is to try and embed both mitigation thinking and adaptation thinking into our decisions. So on a formal level, what that means is we've created two tools, and we did this back in 2020 with the help of the Carbon Trust, one for mitigation, one for adaptation. And these are tools that are mandatory to be used in all formal decision-making processes. So from any part of the organization, when anything has to go through that decision-making process, mitigation and adaptation have to be considered. Now, these tools are quite straightforward. They're Excel-based. They don't require particular environmental or climate change knowledge to be used. And they're designed to be simple, so they can be used by officers who work on all kinds of different things, from public health to infrastructure, etc. And the expectation is that these tools are used in that decision-making process, and therefore it just raises the climate change agenda into those decision processes, and they will have to justify their projects based on what they're doing to mitigate their emissions and how adaptation has been fed into their thinking. So a couple of quick examples that maybe are more obvious. One is around what our highways team do, and they look both at the material that is used on the surface of the roads, considering more porous materials that might be more suitable for heavy rainfall in an extreme rainfall situation, and also roadside ditches that will allow that water to, be taken away from the road area as quickly as possible. So that's one example. Another example is a school building that was being renovated, and as well as considering the mitigation of the materials they were using and the carbon intensity on that side, they understood from thinking about the adaptation needs that actually overheating was becoming, and in the future would increasingly become, a problem in schools. And you may have heard last year there were schools that had to close during the heat wave because they couldn't responsibly have children in really hot classrooms. So the design of the school was adapted to deal with that. So that's one side, that's the formal side of the decision-making process. But also what we're trying to do with our colleagues across the whole organization is have them consider their less formal decisions. And as I'm sure many of you know, if you work in local government, decision-making is a long, drawn-out process with lots of people, lots of different back and forths and iterations of papers, etc., etc. So even when it wasn't a formal decision that was being taken, we were encouraging colleagues to consider the climate change adaptation needs and mitigation needs in their processes and decisions. And what we're doing at the moment, so this is still ongoing work, as a climate change team, we are developing a kind of pack to help teams in other parts of the council talk about climate change, mitigation and adaptation, and how they can best embed that into what they do. So that's kind of the embedding side of our resilience project. What we also did was to elevate resilience in the minds of colleagues was we declared 2022 last year as our year of climate resilience. This was partly in response to, I think, a reflection that it was less understood or less well understood, and also that it was slipping down the agenda a little bit in terms of priorities. So this declaration didn't come with any dramatic big spending or anything, but what it did allow us to do was collate evidence of what's been going on already in the council, and just to amplify the need to act on resilience. And I will put a link in the chat after I've finished just to our resilience page on our website, and on there you can find a series of short videos highlighting how we've been acting in different areas around planning, for example, and flood alleviation, another big one. So I think we've got some feedback from staff internally about using the decision tools, for example. We had 67% have said that completing this formal tool on climate change has increased their awareness of adaptation and the need to adapt. And they 58% have said that the adaptation tool will influence the decision making for current and future projects. So it's already having an impact. And I think, just to kind of draw a slight contrast with what Kate was saying in the previous presentation, I think lots of the examples Kate gave were really great local specific action at a local level. But I think from a county council perspective, what we're trying to do is more in the middle of that ladder that Kate shared, which I liked before, not seen that before, I like that, around the enabling and facilitating and kind of creating the right policy environment for these things to happen at a more granular local level, be that with district council involvement or not, possibly just with community groups as well. So I think what we recognized as our role was that more strategic policy place shaping role. So I know I'm probably closing in on 10 minutes, so I'll just wrap up now. I think what made it work, and you can see this on the case study on the website, was both internal and external collaboration. We, as a climate change team, are probably the most networked team in the organization. We tend to be dipping fingers in all kinds of pies, as it were, just to kind of help people and let people know that we're there as a resource if they want to better understand what they can do in their own work. But we don't understand, of course, all the intricacies of what everybody does across the organization. We also work with external stakeholders. We have a climate change expert stakeholder forum group, which brings together local universities, local climate action community groups, the utility companies, lots of these big players in the county to shape our climate change action, both on mitigation and adaptation. And I think finally, we try and communicate as best we can with our stakeholders, but also with our residents. And we use our social media things as well. And the videos that are on the website are just a sample of the things that we try and share with our residents, just to amplify our climate change goals, and resilience is one of those.